I'm going to talk you through a caseworker intake session, how I would run a session. So this is for potential clients or even for other caseworkers. If there's something that I say that you find interesting or that you can bring to your own sessions. And so a caseworker is somebody who connects you with services that you need, can assess where you're at with safety, risk assessments, just figuring out what your situation is, what you need, and then how to develop a case plan in order to meet your needs or your family's needs or whatever the case plan is about. So this is not financial, legal, medical, or otherwise advice. It is not personalized advice. This is just a general guide to how I would conduct a session, an intake session as a caseworker. I do love being a caseworker. I have the added advantage of having lived experience, so I sometimes pick up on little things that others may not, the nuances and the language that's used and the way we protect ourselves by not always telling the truth. I'm also totally okay with that. I don't expect anybody to come in and trust me for anything. You need to take care of you. You need to keep yourself safe the way you've been doing it. And so you can access a caseworker in whatever situation you are in this relationship. So you might be identifying that it's domestic violence and that there is abuse and violence, and you may want a safe plan to leave or to escape, to start to rebuild your life. Sometimes police, when they attend an incident and then an AVO is issued, or ADVO or IVO, depending which area you're in. I'm in New South Wales, Australia, so a lot of my advice is specific to New South Wales, but you may find that your area has something similar. That's the beauty of caseworkers, is that they do know the local area and what you're entitled to and what support you can get and what's out there and how they can support and help you manage whatever's going on. So you can refer yourself by either emailing them, ringing them. There may be an online referral form. In Australia, there is a national helpline, 1-800-RESPECT, and you can ring them and ask them what local services are in your area so that you can get connected with them. You can also be referred by another service by police. That's what I was saying before. If police have attended an incident and you are assessed as being at serious threat of harm by your partner or ex-partner, then oftentimes you will be referred to in the Shoalhaven. It was called a safety action meeting, where victims and perpetrators and their family, their situations are briefly mentioned. They don't go into detail and things, but it's about making sure which services are connected with which families, or how that we can support in the background, such as sending an AVO to a child's school so that their parent or whoever the person of interest is can't just turn up to the school to collect them. So a caseworker listens, makes suggestions, advocates, refers and supports you. I often say to people, you can tell me as much or as little as you like. I'm not here to pick apart your story. That's not my job. I'm just trying to work out where you are, where you need to be, and how we can safely get there. I let my clients know that they are the expert on their own lives. So I may offer suggestions and advice based on what I know as a caseworker and also my own lived experience. But it is always your choice, and you're allowed to make those choices and decisions. I ask lots of questions, I can do, and I do encourage my clients to use their voice by letting me know if there's something I've said that's not correct, that doesn't apply to them, if I've made an assumption, if I've used a tone or asked a question that you don't understand why I'm asking it. I want my clients to learn to feel comfortable using their voices, because oftentimes in abusive and violent relationships, we just go with the flow. We keep the peace. We just go along with everything, fawning, people pleasing. We're trying to stay safe. So I want to give that safe space for you to ask questions. Why are you asking me if I work? And I can tell you that I'm asking because when you work, you may be in a different income bracket and it may affect some of the services you're entitled to. But I'm always trying to explain that. Why I'm asking certain questions, especially if they may feel judgmental, because I'm not judging here. I'm just trying to get a good picture so that I can support. So take what works and leave what doesn't. I actually give that in relation to parenting advice too. Listen to what people say, take what works, leave what doesn't. You are the expert. You have been keeping yourself safe. You know what's likely to escalate, aggravate, be the best times, the worst times, and there's never a good time to leave. But there are just some certain times that are a lot more unpredictable and scarier and more dangerous than others. So generally, if you get referred by another service, they will give a bit of a blurb on what your situation is or what they want you to get support with or what you've told them. But I generally check if there's an AVO, and what the conditions are, if you've reported to police, if police have attended, if there's been arrests and charges made, if there's court appearances coming up. And the reason for that is to ensure that if you've got an AVO, that you understand all of the conditions on there. So I will often go through the conditions. So because sometimes you know what they are, but you don't really understand what they mean, particularly in relation to person of interest must not approach. What does that mean? Generally, it's to the boundary of a property, but they can be walking up and down the street or driving past your house. So I like to explain that to just give some further knowledge on what is a breach or what isn't a breach or how you can protect yourself. If you have not reported to police, do you want to? That's the victim's choice. Sometimes if there are, and I'm absolutely not advocating that people do report to police or don't, that's your personal situation. But sometimes if there are no children together, no businesses, no assets, no property, it's maybe a shorter relationship. Sometimes it can just be safer to just move or disappear or just cut contact. It does make it a lot harder if you've got a remaining contact, particularly for children, or if you were living in the same house together, or if both your names are on the title. It makes it, a lot more challenging. So going through, what are the charges? Or do you need to report to police? I always recommend you take a support person with you. One, so that if there's bits that you've missed from hearing the information, maybe your support person remembers or can write down notes for you. It is very, very common and very, very normal to come out of a meeting like that with police, with legal, with a caseworker, with a counsellor, and forget big chunks of what happened because your brain's offline. Your rational brain is offline and you're in survival. And our trauma brains can cause us to lose blocks of memory. It can distort things, especially if you're heightened and triggered and you are just overwhelmed. So take a support person who can write notes or who can ask clarifying questions or who can explain things to you afterwards. I recommend taking a support person to the police station because sometimes you don't always get the greatest response, especially if you are understandably triggered, heightened, escalated. It can be really hard to advocate for yourself if you are in a heightened state and trying to speak about a situation that is, very scary and very abusive and very dangerous. So, first up, after all of that, I like to check in where housing's up to. Are you in the home? Has the perpetrator been removed? Have you moved out? Are you in a refuge? Are you homeless? Are you staying temporarily with someone? How long can you stay there? Are you safe where you are? So regardless of whether you've stayed in the home or moved to a different home, you still need to safety plan around, if possible, security cameras, making sure all the doors and windows lock. if you have remained in the property, changing locks, logging anyone out of security cameras or accounts and things like that. Victims of domestic violence should be able to live their life, but sometimes you just need to lay low for your own safety. I used to carry my phone to the washing line with me, and I barely left my house unless it was work or grocery shopping for about the first 3 months because I was so scared of running into him. So sometimes you just need to do things a little bit out of the ordinary, change your daily commute to work or to school, change your routine, particularly if the person of interest knows what your routine is and knows where you're going to be at different points of the day. So housing. Do you need to access emergency or temporary housing? Maybe a refuge. Do you need any assistance with the rent? Can you afford it on your own? Centrelink do offer a crisis payment if you apply within 7 days. And so that just helps you. It's just an immediate payment, a relief, a grant, a crisis payment, just while you're trying to get, your whole self together, because it is really challenging, very difficult. In the longer term, are you able to sustain a private rental? Sometimes people are they're like blacklisted for real estates through no fault of their own. It may be non-payment of rent or property damage that was done to a previous property in amongst violence and abuse. You can, particularly in New South Wales, if you are in a public or community or social housing place, you can get event numbers if police attended those to write off any damage that was not caused by you. If it was caused within the context of domestic violence, you can get some reprieve with that. There are new laws in New South Wales as to being able to break a lease if you are named on an AVO or have a support letter from a caseworker. So that's also the benefit from a caseworker and a support service, is that they can write you support letters and advocate on your behalf as to how dangerous your situation is, how urgently you need help, or what would help you, particularly in relation to housing, counselling, legal, and anything else that you might need. So, so safety planning as well. There is, in New South Wales, there is a program called Staying Home Leaving Violence, who will assess your home, whether you are in the home that the perpetrator lived in, or have moved to your own, because it doesn't just stop after we leave, and your safety planning probably needs to continue for years and years afterwards. I know that feels like a lot, but it will get better. It hopefully will get better. Mine definitely did, but I did need to be mindful of my surroundings, my safety, what was happening for a good few years after I escaped the relationship. It is also okay if you stay in the home to begin with and then leave, so I stayed in our family home, and 2 years later I had to move because I just could not stand to be in the home where I had experienced abuse and violence. And so it was just too hard. We moved out of area. That was a lot safer for me because I moved to a place where nobody knew who I was or who he was. There was nobody who knew the story. Be very careful with friends who tell you that they're not going to pick sides. Generally, people do. I learnt the hard way that not everybody you call a friend is a friend. Some people will relay information back to your ex-partner. And I very much learned that the hard way. Online, the tech stuff, I'm pretty technologically challenged. The tech stuff is really rising because there are just so many apps and different things and hidden networks and passwords and things. So my best advice around that is change passwords for all accounts, your banking accounts, if you are looking for private rentals, your real estate accounts, utilities. Change the security questions and passwords too, because a person who knows you will more than likely know the answers to those to be able to change your passwords or to get in. I also recommend creating a new email account and then just slowly, switching things over to the new one, but leave that old one for any children, court, legal, police, communication or that your ex-partner may like to communicate with. Anything in writing does really help towards breaches or any further proof of harassment and abuse, violence, intimidation, stalking, things like that. So keeping an email address, if you have to get text messages from them, turning off the notifications. And then you can do that with emails, your text messages, even phone and things like that. If there's not like a court-ordered parenting app and you are required to communicate, turn the notifications off and just look at them once a day when you've settled yourself, you've reset your nervous system, you're trying to get yourself into a bit of a calm space, and you control when you look at those messages and how and when you respond. It'll save a lot of trauma. Reset your phone if you can. If you are at all able to, get a new phone. There are so many hidden apps and things like that it's just easier to reset, get a new one. There are DV safe phones in Australia, so you may even be able to get hold of a phone that has, it's a DV safe phone, so it's got no other accounts on it, and just be really careful about what you log onto on that phone. If you find yourself in a situation where your ex-partner seems to know where you are, consider having a sweep done of the car. There are lots of trackers and air tags and things that do get found. Really scary and really hard to find, but do be very mindful of that. Really building your support network, and that's friends, that's personal, that's letting people know. So if you've got neighbors who you feel comfortable letting them know, inform them, and kids' schools, your workplace, so that you can have those safety plans in whatever area that you're in. So you have a plan around home, work, getting to work, leaving work, dropping the kids off, things like that. Your caseworker will also know how to access any emergency relief services, which may be around groceries, utilities, things like that. A social worker at Centrelink, helping you. We have a court advocacy service in New South Wales that you can be connected with, who will give you information about court appearances, outcomes, and prep you for if you do need to go to court to give evidence. Children, are they named on the AVO, and are they spending time with the other parent? So I did have a no contact, no approach AVO for my own safety and for the kids' safety. But there are a lot of times these days there is space for legal or a parenting plan to override some of those, not override it, but it's so that both parents can spend time with the children. And I get that. I'm very reluctant to say that an abuser who is a violent and abusive partner can be a good parent, because I do disagree in most of those situations. If you do feel that your children will be okay in their care, and you do want them to see them, and the children do want to see them, then get a parenting plan into place. As mentioned before, you know your situation best. So definitely get legal advice about that, and speak to police if you do have an AVO that allows for a parenting plan on there. You really want to do that properly with somebody who's done a whole bunch of them and knows the ins and outs of keeping you safe as well, and keeping everyone safe, not just the children. But we don't want the person of interest to breach the AVO and end up in jail either. Like, we just don't, because if they need to be there because they've committed violent offenses and the judge, rules that, but it's not the goal. The goal is that you're safe and that children have both parents who can provide a positive and meaningful relationship. It doesn't always happen, but that is ultimately the goal. So safety planning, if they're spending time with the other parents, safety planning around handover. I always do recommend not coming into contact, especially if there's an AVO, especially if there's conditions on there, especially if you are scared of them. I was unable to hand over to my ex-partner because of a no contact, no approach AVO. But truth be told, I was frightened of him. I would give my children to a mutual friend who then would, take the children to their father, or I would drop the children up to his parents' place where he was living. Kids would get out. I wouldn't even get out of the car. And so we had sort of things in place. But if you can use school, daycare, sporting events, it will not only keep you safer, but it just removes any of the emotion and the space to be able to intimidate, to belittle, to undermine your parenting. And it is quite horrific for children and for parents, for children to be crying and so upset when they're doing a handover. I mean, there is nothing worse than somebody having to peel your child out of your arms when they just don't want to go. It's horrific. So if you can take that out of it, then by all means. So getting, a legal referral to legal, there are many free services out there who can at least give you initial advice. I would always recommend doing a referral to a financial counsellor, particularly if you've got debt that is in both of your names or only your name, or there's some sort of loans or things that are shared. A financial counsellor can really help you with that, as well as budgeting and making sure that you have been able to access any utility assistance that you need, Centrelink, with income and things like that. Financial counsellor, I'd absolutely recommend that one. They are brilliant. Counsellor as well. So if you have been a victim of a violent incident in New South Wales, you can apply to victim services, who not only help to relocate or to help you pay for a security package with alarms, changing window lock, security cameras. You can also get access to 22 hours of victim services counselling as well. That doesn't cost you anything, and that can really support your recovery forward. I am a big fan of counselling and therapy. There is different kinds. Talk therapy is great for being able to get out what's going on and to get those strategies around resetting your nervous system, or just talking through, situations and how you're going to do things and what steps you can put into place in that planning. When you're ready to, you have to be ready to see a counsellor too. It is very scary to be talking about things that you may never have spoken to anybody about. And so when you are ready to do that, absolutely get access to a counsellor or some sort of a therapist. When you are ready to heal deeper, I absolutely recommend hypnotherapy, EMDR, inner child work, or internal family systems. They're sort of my top that I would look into to heal those past childhood traumas, because we've all got them. If there's any property settlement, division of assets that need, I absolutely hate telling victims this, but you are absolutely entitled to everything you are entitled to, but you do need to weigh up what the emotional cost is, what the time, the dragging out, and the fear and the not closing off that part of your life. My ex-husband was awarded more money from our property settlement than what I would have given him. I agreed to it because he said to me, if you give me X amount, I'll sign the papers. And I thought that is better than anything and dragging this out any longer, because I am so tired and so done. Yes, you're entitled to stuff, but weigh up the emotional cost for yourself. I do ask about mental health and substance use. You don't have to answer, but what I find is mental health and substance use are completely normal when you've experienced trauma. You're trying to numb the pain, and it might not be substances. It could be alcohol, it could be gambling, it could be shopping, it could be whatever. But you're trying to numb pain, and that's okay. But what I find is that's the first thing the other parent will target if you have mental health issues, if you have any substance or addictive, behaviors. That's the first thing they'll go for. And plus it helps you as a person to get into any drug and alcohol counseling, or go and see a GP, get some counseling, see a psychologist, because childhood trauma and then adult trauma leaves a long-lasting impact. I mean, it literally creates internal wounds and leaves trauma stuck in our bodies. So it is only a good thing to be able to speak about that and work through it and plan through it and things like that. but it is also the first thing they go for. And you know what? You need to be doing stuff that's healthy and that's, that's good for you as well, because it sucks feeling like crap. It absolutely sucks. Depression is often a lot of times worrying about the past, and anxiety is worrying about the future, and it's a horrible place to live in either of them. So I do always recommend getting that further assistance. I still see a counsellor because it's helpful, and you have to find the right one, and not everybody will work for you, and that's okay. You take what works and leave what doesn't. So I think that children too. So look, children need a lot of support with this. There was a time when we sort of looked at children as being, they're like the secondary victim, or they witnessed it, or children are victims in their own right. They go through domestic violence in their own way, with their own mental health impacts, with their own wounds and their own traumas created. So if you can get children into counselling, if you can get them into any support groups or group programs for children, then your local support services may offer them. If you can access any sort of parenting programs like Circle of Security, black box parenting, things like that will only help to improve and increase your own knowledge and understanding and ability to cope. Because I know that I feel like I was in survival mode most of my children's childhood, because I was always just trying to stay alive and stay safe. And I do wish that I had access to a lot of those programs, because they're helpful. They are so good. And they really help children to feel heard and seen when they may not have had a voice. And I often say that when my children were growing up, I almost conditioned them not to talk. Don't go to school and tell anybody that dad got angry. Don't tell them that we called the police. Don't tell people this. This is just our business. And so when I left and I actually wanted them to open up to a counsellor, I'd condition them not to. And so that was an uphill battle, because my children all bear their own scars from growing up with domestic violence and having to watch the way I was treated and hurt, and, and the things they heard, their dad say to their mum. So it's a lifelong, healing things, but it does get better. But ask for the help and take the help. That's one of the things I can recommend too. There is help out there. You need to find the right people and keep knocking on doors, and keep ringing and keep asking, because it does get better. And I just want you to know there is life after domestic violence, but there are people who are here to help. And you can go and see them at any stage in your journey. So the recovery afterwards is about safety, support, and self-care, looking after yourself, and the somatic body work. So like I said, hypnotherapy, EMDR, inner child work. I do some stuff myself. I do one-on-one sessions and group programs. Caseworkers are free because it's generally funded by your state's funding body or some sort of child protection or family funded department. So reach out to a caseworker. I know it can feel really scary when you don't know what to do next, and they can help you work through that. They can help you sift through all the information and pick out the bits and then pass on their knowledge, and it can be a really helpful experience. And yeah, so that's sort of how I go through a caseworker, like an intake session. If you are a caseworker, take what works for you. And yeah, I think that's just about it. But if you've got any questions for me, let me know, send me a message, comment on here, and I'll see what I can answer. But you are significant because you are. I love you because you exist. And there is life after trauma.